How's it going, guys? So, every year I try to make a smartphone awards or a kind of recap of the best smartphones I liked over the year. Now, this year I thought about doing the smartphone awards, but I feel like it's become a little bit overdone. And that's not really the big reason. But the real reason is that I haven't really bought a lot of smartphones this year. So I've bought only a couple, but I have looked at a lot of them. I've experienced them, so I know what a general idea of them is. So instead of making a complete, awards for, a lot of phones that I don't even have, I decided to make a tier list. Now, this was inspired by Jacqueline. I think her channel is called Nothing But Tech. Well, she did a tier list, and I remembered, wow, those are actually really cool. And what it will allow me to do is talk about a lot more smartphones and get a little bit more opinionated with them. So, without wasting any time, let's go ahead and look at the tier list. Now, I have 21 phones that I have selected, 21 or 22, one or the other. And they're all they're from I think 6 brands in total. There's LG, Microsoft, OnePlus, Apple, Samsung, and Google. So 6 brands. And they're all the kind of premium phones, the flagship phones. Like, they're the well-known ones. Why I didn't pick Oppo, Vivo, or some of the other brands is because, one, they're not available in the US. 2, I really don't know much about them, and I feel like they just launch new phones constantly, and it's impossible to keep up. So I really didn't include any of those. So this is what I've got. So let's get started. And right here, number 1, we've got the iPhone 12 mini. Now, I think the iPhone 12 lineup on the whole is really nice. It really does do a lot of good things. And the 12 mini, I think, is a fantastic phone. A small phone that's just really, really unique. So kind of deciding between B and A. Why it goes to B for me would be the battery life, but again, that's just a symptom of low, the smaller size. So I think I'm not going to dock it that much. So I have used the 12 mini, and it gets you about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time on a single charge, which I think is at the lowest level of acceptable. Any less, and this would be a fail, but I think it just passes by on a whim. So moving on, let's look at the iPhone 12, which is the next one in line. And this one, I think this is a really, really good compromise. And I think this is going to be one of the best selling phones of the year. Now, I do have one problem with it, being that the price is really annoying to me. It starts at $830. Comparatively, last year you could get an iPhone 11 for $699. So this is more or less the direct replacement in my eyes. So getting a $130 price jump, it kind of hurts things for me. But you have to remember, it does get 5G and an AMOLED screen, which the iPhone 11 didn't have. So is it S or A? Personally for me it's an A, but I feel like this phone will be the market leader. This is going to be the one that really just dominates the market, more than the 12 mini. I think the 12 mini is a little bit too small for most people. So I think the iPhone 12, I think, deserves the S tier. It's fantastic, really. Moving on, let's talk about the iPhone 12 Pro. This is the same size of the iPhone 12, but the big issue here is that it really doesn't give you much for what it's charging you for. So you pay $1,000 for this compared to the $830 that you'd pay for the iPhone 12, but you get the same display, you get the same size, you get the same battery, you get the same processor, you get the same internals. The one thing that is different is that it has a improved camera system, and not even entirely improved. It's just there's 2 extra features. It has the telephoto, and it's got a LiDAR sensor. So I think that this is a C tier, just because the phone is great, but when you stack it up next to the iPhone 12, that just starts to make so much less sense. But you know what? No, actually, I think this is a B tier, and the B tier because even though it is a little bit more expensive than the iPhone 12, it does definitely do, it does have that telephoto lens and the LiDAR. But you know what? I'm gonna stick to my original decision. This is a C tier phone. And the reason is just there isn't that much to differentiate the two. Sure, you get double the storage when you at the base level, but not really that great. So let's move on to the 12 Pro Max. Now, this is going to sit right at a B. I don't have to think about it that much. This is a B phone because, one, it's great, but at this price, no 120 hertz is a big kick in the it's a big kick, and it really does feel like that phone needs some more features in it. What it gives you is fantastic, but the reality is you could spend the $700 for an iPhone 12 mini and get the same exact software experience. The only real difference is you get a bigger screen, bigger battery, and a slightly better camera system. So this one, why this is higher than the iPhone 12 Pro is because the iPhone 12 Pro's, right next to the 12 with the same battery, same everything, really makes a lot less sense. This doesn't really have direct competition. This is the biggest screen you can get. So if you want a big screen and you want an iPhone, you want the latest iPhone, that's kind of the way to go. And I think that, at $1,100 for that big screen experience, it's fine. So this remains at a B. Moving on, let's look at the Pixel 4a 5G. Now this phone is interesting. I don't know where I should go. I think, it's going to be near the top, but just don't know where exactly it sits. So definitely not a C. I think this deserves a B. And I'll tell you why it's a B. This phone has all the great stuff of the Pixel 4a. It's got a slightly bigger screen. It's got the same camera system from the Pixel 5. And it's got 5G. So all that you pay $150 more. So this becomes a $500 smartphone. And for $500, I'm trying to think, brand new, it's hard to argue with. That camera system, everything. You know what? I think it deserves the A tier. If you want 5G, if you want all that good stuff, really this phone, it doesn't have that much competition in my opinion. At least in the United States. Really, you're only looking at, what are you looking at? You're looking at the iPhone XR costs $500. What else costs $500? You have to go down to the Samsung Galaxy A series to get a $500 phone. You can't get an S series for $500 unless you go the used route. So, yeah, I think that the Pixel 4a 5G is going to sit at an A grade, and I really like this phone. I think they've done a lot right with it. The Pixel, the A strategy has been surprisingly successful for Google, and it makes sense to me. It's just a great phone. So let's talk about the Pixel 4a, and this one I don't even have to think about. This is straight up S tier, and I'm gonna make a video focused on this in a day or two. But this phone is just absolutely fantastic. It recalibrates what is important. For $350, I was astonished at what you could get, and honestly, everything I got, the experience was just complete. I didn't feel like I was missing anything, and this phone is so hard to argue with. It's just, any trouble it has, that $350 price point just immediately makes me forget about it. So the Pixel 4a, undoubtedly S tier phone. Next, we've got the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Now this is a big phone, and I think it should sit right at B as well. Now, why not higher? I think that Samsung, one, needs to improve the display in the sense that you need to give 120 Hz at full resolution. Right now, you're locked in at 1080p. Your competition goes way higher at way lower prices. So at $1,300, no excuse not to do that. I just can't excuse that. That really does bring it down a level for me. Number two, I think that the camera bump on this is just extremely large. So a little bit of toning down of that would have been great, or otherwise just make the phone a little bit bigger, give us a bigger battery, really just lean into that Note kind of power user thing there. And yeah, overall, this is just a great phone. It really does make a lot more sense, especially compared to the S20 Ultra. I'll talk about that a little bit later down the road. But yeah, this is for a Note series, I think this is one of the better phones that you could buy. It's absolutely fantastic. So moving on, we have the Galaxy Note 20, and this undoubtedly goes in the F. And why it's an F is simple. It's got a 1080p screen with 60 Hz refresh rate. It's got a plastic back. It's a mind-boggling phone, let's just say. Compared to the Note 20 Ultra, there's a big step down, but it still costs $1,000. This phone is not worth $1,000 in any sense of the word. It's not worth $800. This phone, I would pay $600 or $650 for it, maybe $700. Really no more than that. And this was just a completely, I don't know what to say. This was just an atrocious phone. It really, didn't do anything for me, and I think it didn't for the market either, because this phone has been discounted, I think, a couple weeks after it went on sale, and I've never seen this in public. I have not seen people talk about it. This phone has just completely failed, and it failed for good reason. It really didn't give you anything, and that price just really, I think that if they had a more aggressive pricing strategy, whereas this would be launched at, say, a $750, $800 price bracket, I think that would have changed things a lot. But for $1,000 for a plastic back, for a very lower screen, no expandable memory, just it didn't work. So moving on, let's talk about the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, this is a phone that I wasn't expecting to be as good as it was, but I like this phone. It was a good phone. I still have a problem with the price, though. So I think it goes with the B tier, the phones that I liked but still had a price issue is kind of what this is turning into. So the OnePlus 8 Pro, fantastic display. I think one of the best displays this year, hands down. It's a massive phone, though, and it's got a massive camera bump. It just is annoying. It finally incorporates wireless charging that I've been asking for forever, so yay. The color options were a little bit meh, but the green was pretty cool. That was fine. And overall, this has been a pretty decent smartphone. The price, $900 and $1,000. So OnePlus is no longer a flagship killer. They're a flagship themselves. So at that price point, I do think that the camera needs a little bit more work. That's why it's not higher. So B tier, I think, sits comfortably for the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now the OnePlus 8, the younger brother to this is a D phone. It would be an F, but I think that it really doesn't do anything fatally bad. It's a combination of mistakes here. So this is a $700 phone. It's got, the reason I say it's a combination of failures is because this is more expensive than its predecessor, but it really doesn't do much more than its predecessor, the OnePlus 7T. It's got a slightly updated design, and beyond that, really not much. It doesn't have a wireless charging unit set up. There's just it's questionable in a lot of decisions it made, and I honestly wouldn't recommend the OnePlus 8 to anybody. If you are in the market for an 8T, you're much better off with the 7T, and that's the reality of it. Then comes the OnePlus 8T, the update to this, and I don't know. They're like, really, this phone improved a few things here and there, but it also went up in price. And honestly, comparatively, I think that for $750, this phone really doesn't deserve a C tier. It should be a little bit better for what you get, especially comparing to some of the other, some of the competition out there. For $750, you need to do a lot more now than you could in, 2 or 3 years ago. Moving on to OnePlus Nord. This was an interesting phone for me. I was expecting not to like it. I ended up liking it, but I still have a few issues with it. So I think this gets the... I'm deciding. It's between B or C for sure. So I'm just going to recall, the big issue I have is it's got that pill-style screen cutout, which is absolutely annoying. It really doesn't make sense. And the cameras are decent, but that macro camera, the kind of marketing they're doing doesn't work. So for about $399, that's what you could pay for if you can get it. I bought this in India, so I paid about $400. You can't buy this phone in the US. It's quite kind of weird. But you do get 5G. You get a 90 hertz screen refresh rate. You get an AMOLED screen, and you don't get wireless charging, of course, and it has a plastic back. So given the price and everything it does, I think that B is fine. Sorry about that. So given the price and everything, B is, I think, where it should sit. There are a few improvements I can make, but I think overall this phone is a pretty good contender. And at the $400 price bracket, it really does start to make a lot of sense. And it's got a huge battery. It's got, fast charging. It's great. Moving on to Pixel 5. Now this is the Pixel 4 was horrible. It had a lot of flaws, and it would have been in the F tier if I did this last year. But the Pixel 5, it improves a lot, but it's still, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is supposedly a improvement, but what I didn't get was the Pixel 4a 5G and 5 launched at the same time. And from what I can understand, there's really no benefit to going for the Pixel 5 over the 4a 5G. The 4a 5G doesn't have a few things, but on the whole, the 4a 5G just makes more sense, and it's $200 cheaper. The Pixel 5 does a lot of things well. I'm not gonna lie, it is a good phone. The size is really good. The cameras are fantastic, but again, All of this stuff applies to the Pixel 4a as well. So this doesn't do anything unique or special. And not to mention, that material they used is horrendous. I hate it. And honestly, for that material itself, I would give it an F, but I'm not going to be like that. It's D is where I think the 5 lands. It's weird. I think that, you know, Google really hits their stride when they're making something a little bit more budget focused compared to when they're trying to be, you know, trying to make a top tier phone. So this stays down in D for me. Moving on, the S20 FE, the fan edition, and this is without a doubt an A tier phone. It's got fantastic stuff. The one reason I'm keeping it off the S tier list, the only reason, is because it's got that camera ring, the silver camera ring in the front display on that front camera. Otherwise, this is an S tier phone. This costs $699. It's got every flagship feature you want. It's got a Snapdragon 865. It's got 5G. It's got 6 gigs of RAM, or 8 gigs, depending on which variant you go for. And it's priced aggressively. It's got wireless charging. It's got fast charging. It's got a plastic back, but the plastic back is done exceptionally well. I don't mind plastic backs. I've said that before, and I will say it again. So this one gets an A. It's a fantastic phone, and honestly, very easy to recommend. At that price point, it's hard to argue for about $700 what this phone gives you. And also, it does have the 120 hertz display, so it's really an S20 with a plastic body, but a slightly larger screen and more battery life. So not a lot to complain about with S20 FE. So moving on, let's talk about the Galaxy S20 Ultra. And this is another one that I don't know if I should give it a D or an F, but you know what? It's an F, because let me tell you, this has been such a weird, stupid thing. And because of its mistakes, I think the S20 and S20 Plus suffered. So the S20 Ultra launched at a $1,400 price point. Crazy, $1,400. And what it did was it gave you a massive screen, a massive everything, but it really went overboard on the camera marketing, and unfortunately, they didn't deliver. So they went in with a 100x, you know, zoom. That really wasn't that good. They were touting so many other things. They had a lot of issues. They had a lot of autofocus issues out of the gate. You know, they did say they resolved it, but I still hear people complain about it, and I don't know if it's just something that, you know, it has been a flawed launch. Let's just say that. And $1,400 is not worth it for this phone. I really can't justify that in any way. It really, and you know, it's $1,400, and it came out just a month or two before the OnePlus 8 Pro, and it still doesn't have a 1440p with 120 Hz display. You can only get 120 Hz if you're in 1080p mode, and that sucks. That stings, considering that Samsung made those displays for OnePlus. So, what's going on? Why? It's confusing to me. The S20 Ultra just really, it was so disappointing, and I don't even know. And not to mention the Exynos versus Snapdragon thing, where the Exynos version is considerably worse in performance and battery life compared to the Snapdragon. Which, why? Why would you do that? This isn't the first year. This happened last year as well, but this year was so much more significant. It's crazy. If you don't know about this, I'll link a video down in the description from Mr. Who's the Boss. He did a video comparing the S20 Snapdragon and the S20 Ultra. I'm sorry, the S20 Ultra Snapdragon and the S20 Ultra Exynos, and it blows your mind to see the differences from the same exact phone. Just it's crazy. So the S20 Ultra, F tier. But you know, I will say they did make up for it with the S20 FE and the Note 20, but the S20 Ultra, and not to mention, the S20 Ultra is more expensive than the Note 20 Ultra, and it's worse in a lot more ways, so I don't even know. Next, let's talk about the S20. I wasn't going to include this, but I realized that it's so different from the S20, you know, in a lot of ways that it just makes sense. So this one gets, surprisingly, a B tier. So I've been using this S20 for about 2 months now. I bought it super late, but I've been using it, and I made a video about this. It's hard for me to put down. This phone is fantastic. It does all the things that the S20 Ultra was touting. You know, the same things that not touting, but the same things it does well, this one does as well. All it does is it eliminates the gimmick. So it doesn't have the stupid 100x zoom. It doesn't have those autofocus issues. It doesn't have the massively large phone with a massively large camera bump. It makes a lot of smart decisions. The one decision it didn't make that was smart is the price. So at $1,000, this phone just wasn't worth it. At $800, even $900, possibly I could be a little bit more. I would be able to justify this a little bit more. But for the price, it really didn't do well. But I bought this myself for $600 refurbished from Amazon with a warranty, and since it's still under a year since this phone is launched, it's still under Samsung warranty as well. So if there are any issues with it, I could potentially send it back to Samsung until probably February or March, whenever this phone was initially bought, and still get manufacturer warranty cover on it. So that's the reason why, the values have tanked on these. So if you're in the market and you're comfortable with used phones, the S20 is a pretty good option. Next, let's talk about the iPhone SE. This phone is interesting. I love small phones, and this phone was a small phone. So that alone puts it up in the top tiers up here. It's not going to be S tier, I'll say that. The one big issue with this phone has to be its display. They clearly cut out that, but it can't be a C tier because of the performance alone. The performance on this was fantastic, but I don't want to put it against the A tier because I think that these phones have done just something way better. It's weird. I'm trying to think. The battery life on this was meh. It was probably the same level as the iPhone 12 mini, but again, this is cheaper than the 12 mini. It sits at $399. So this is a $400 phone. So it's B or A. So let me work this out. Let me talk this through. So this has got fantastic performance, but the issue I have is that this phone also, it's outdated in many ways. The camera lens itself is from the iPhone 8, which came out 3 years ago. Not a big issue. The camera quality is still really good, but you can clearly tell if you've used a newer iPhone that this does lack in a few ways. It's got no night mode. It's got a lot of missing features. It really does kind of look weird. It's got pretty big bezels, but that I'm willing to forgive because it's got a fingerprint scanner on the front, which has actually been very helpful this year. I'm going to give it an A tier, mainly because I forgot to mention one thing, with Apple, since this was launched just this year and it's got the newest chipset inside it. It's got at least the newest when it came out. So the same one as the iPhone 11 and 11 Pros. This is going to get updates for 4 years. This is probably going to get more updates than its competitors, the 4A 5G, even the 4A, the 4A 5G, the OnePlus Nord. I'm certain of that, and it's got way more performance chops than any of those phones. All of those have mid-range chipsets. This has got a flagship, fantastic. So this goes in the A tier. There are a lot of things that I wish this phone would do differently, but what it does right, it does so well that it negates some of the issues I have with it. And the biggest thing is it's a $399 smartphone, and I see these everywhere. I have started seeing them everywhere. It's pretty clear that the market wanted this, and they got it. So the iPhone SE is going to stay in the A tier. Moving on, the Microsoft Surface Duo, and I think you guys all see this coming. This is an F tier phone. So the concept was to have a folding phone that had two separate displays, but it could kind of fold all the way back, all the way forward. So it had a really unique hinge design, and it looked cool, but execution was flawed. The software was horribly done. Performance was bad, and the internals just weren't worth the price. So this is a $1,400 phone, and it's not even a phone, to be honest. It's only got one camera, which has terrible quality, and overall, this phone, from what I experienced and what I saw other people show me, it's not done a good job. So it's an F tier phone. There's not much to say about it. I really do wish that, if Microsoft were to keep making phones, which, it's doubtful at this point. They've had too many bad experiences for me to think they're going to keep putting money into this. $1,400 for a phone like this, it's not even a phone. Don't sell it as a phone, first off. Sell it as something else. Sell it as a tablet. Sell it as a productivity device that you could potentially make phone calls on. It was just a very poor design, poor execution all around, and I can't believe that Microsoft launched this product in the first place. And this isn't even the bigger one. There's another one like this coming out soon, and I have no hopes for that. Microsoft has just not been doing good with a bunch of their products recently, and this is one of the big ones. Moving on, the LG Wing. This is such an interesting phone, and if it was priced better, I would have bought one. It's not an F because it really doesn't do anything fatally wrong, but it is a quirky phone, and it doesn't do exactly what every other phone does. So I think this gets a C. So this is a $1,000 phone, and it has one gimmick. It can flip out. So it's got two screens, one on top and one on the bottom. And when you can kick out the top screen to swivel and make basically a T shape. Now, that's super cool. Really don't know what you can use that for, though. Practically, not much. I haven't seen any software developers or apps really take advantage of the form factor. And it's more or less a concept phone brought to life, but at least this concept phone works and doesn't have fatal flaws like a lot of other phones do. So LG Wing is a cool concept. I would like to see more like this, but I'm not sure that the market will adopt them or adapt to them, and that's my concern, really. Android developers do try to make a lot of unique things, but software just doesn't catch up to them, and that's when they usually fail. So that is the LG Wing. Moving on, let's talk about the foldables. So I've saved this for the last. I don't really count the Microsoft as a foldable, so let's not talk about that. These are the actual foldables, the ones that have a display that folds, that are not split displays. And I have both the Z Flip 5G and the Z Flip 4G. Even though they were, they're two different phones, they were both launched this year, and they do have significant differences, so I will mention that. So let me start off with the Z Flip 5G. This was an interesting phone, but it is expensive. It's $1,449, about $1,500, probably even higher when you add in taxes and everything. And this phone really is interesting to me. I think it's the most functional of the foldables. It's the most familiar, but that price point is so hard to justify because I don't know what it does that's special. It really doesn't. It's just a phone that you can fold, and I think that's the only gimmick. So I'm going to leave this at a C. I think it's got a great look to it. That the new bronze color looks fantastic. The foldable just looks great. It's just I can't justify this high price for what is essentially the same user experience as the other bar phones. It's just when you're done using it, you can fold it. I don't know. I don't know if what's up there. If this starts to become a little bit more affordable and there are more use cases that I can personally justify, then maybe this starts to go up. But we'll see in a future video how that goes. Then there's the Z Flip 4G. This is a D. It launched in March, right after the S20. And it still had an 855, whereas everything else had an 865. It was still $1,300, and it just there were things missing here that I really wish that the things that they fixed with the 5G. So this stays at a D. Not a bad phone. It's just again hard to justify. And now the Z Fold 2, the Galaxy Z Fold 2. This is the phone that I think has been most revered by everyone. It's the one that everybody loves to talk about. And I haven't bought one. I haven't even actually used one in person. I have seen pictures. I've seen a lot of videos. I saw the first Fold, so I've used that for a couple minutes, but that's it. Beyond that, I haven't really had a lot of experience with the Z Fold 2. But I will say this. It looks absolutely fantastic. That design, the look, it just looks great. The question for me just becomes, what is the point of this phone, right? It really does, because if I want a tablet, the screen on this is a little bit too small for my liking. If I want to use a phone, why don't I just use a phone? Like this sits in a weird middle place, because I can just get by using a phone when I'm outside, and then when I really do need a tablet, I can just grab my tablet. I can grab my iPad. So it really doesn't make sense to me why I need to have one device that can do both. Because it's not like it improves the experience on either end. It's a worse phone experience than a normal phone, and it's a worse tablet experience than a normal tablet. So you're kind of giving up both and not really getting much. You're getting just a two-in-one experience, which I don't know if it really makes sense. So this is, I think, the hardest one for me to grade. It's not an F, D, or C. That I'll be clear with. They made big improvements. If this was last year, I would very likely have put this in. If this was last year's model, I likely would have put this in a D or F. But this year, I think it does a lot of really interesting things. They've fixed so many issues. They've made so many improvements with the hinge. And, from just the positive things I hear everybody say about it, it does make me consider this phone is an A-tier phone. But the one thing I do want to say is that this is a $2,000 phone. $2,000, and I'm not kidding, the values of this are already horrible. You can buy one of these in mint condition for about $1,400, and this is still a current model year. After a year, this is probably going to be worth $600-700. So this is definitely a early adopter product that won't have a long life. People will forget this quickly, and you know, that comes into question. If you're paying $2,000, does it feel good to have a device that will be very quickly outdated? It's interesting. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to leave it at B. And I just realized why I think it deserves to stay at a B. It's because of the durability and just overall uncertainty of this platform. Now, foldables are the trend for sure, but I still don't see many other companies jump on this and do it well. So Samsung is the only one that's done it well, in my opinion. No other foldable brand has made a decent foldable phone that I would even consider buying. I would consider buying the Samsungs. I wouldn't consider buying any other foldable. And it begs the question, when Apple does something, every company starts copying it. Samsung has been doing this for almost 2 years, and I've not seen many large companies copy them. And I think there's a reason. It's because they don't think this has a future. That's just my opinion, by the way. Don't get on me for it. But I think that the foldables right now have a very uncertain future ahead of them. And if things work out, we'll see a lot more of them. But if things aren't really going their way, it's a lot harder to justify this platform, because, as I said, it doesn't do things better. So it doesn't make your phone experience better. It doesn't make your tablet experience better. It gives you a worse experience of both of them for a much higher price. So I could buy a Galaxy S20 and an iPad Pro, and I'd still be under the price of this Galaxy Z Fold 2. It just doesn't make sense to me. In fact, I could probably buy a Note 20 Ultra, and I could buy a iPad Air. Yeah, the iPad Air is $600. So $1,300 plus $600. You're still pretty far ahead, I'd say, buying those two instead of a Z Fold 2, because you get an amazing tablet experience and you get an amazing phone experience. It right there is the issue for me, because I don't see the practical use of it, because it doesn't really provide you a better experience on either end. So that's kind of it. So we have gone through all the smartphones, and here's the ranking. So let's just go ahead and summarize everything. So the top, we've got the S tier, iPhone 12 and the Pixel 4a. You've got the A, which is the 12 mini, the Pixel 4a 5G, the Galaxy S20 FE, and the iPhone SE. Then in the B tier, we've got the iPhone 12 Pro Max, the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, the OnePlus 8 Pro, the OnePlus Nord, the Galaxy S20, and the Galaxy Z Fold 2. In the C tier, we've got the iPhone 12 Pro, the LG Wing, and the Galaxy Z Flip 5G. In the D tier, we've got the OnePlus 8, the OnePlus 8T, you've got the Pixel 5, and you've got the Galaxy Z Flip 4G. Then F tier, the worst of the worst, is the Note 20, the S20 Ultra, and the Microsoft Surface Duo. So that is it, guys. That is my tier ranking list of the smartphones launched in 2020. Let me know what you guys think. I'm 100% sure not everyone's going to agree with me on this, so I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you let me know what rankings you'd change, where you'd put them, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media. I'll have all the handles right here on the screen, and of course down in the description below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.